There will be an opportunity for questions at the end. Feel free at the end, you can either turn on your video and your microphone and ask your questions live, or if you're a little stage shy, like me actually, you can actually put your question in the chat and Annie will get to that once we kind of go through the presentation. If you don't know me, my name is Cecilia Koger, Cecilia Caro, just changed my name. I'm the Director of Exhibitions for Angels Gate Cultural Center, and I'm going to be taking you through the curatorial call process, our guidelines, how to apply, maybe best practices and tips in order to be successful. And then we'll have a Q&A session at the end. And I'm joined today by my partner in the gallery, and I'll let Annie introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Annie Parsons. I'm the gallery coordinator, registrar, and preparator, and generally around the gallery as much as I can be. Today I'm gonna help out by keeping an eye on the chat and being backup for Cecilia. Thanks for being here today.
Yes, and thank you, Annie, for putting this presentation together. We are a really small team. It is just Annie and I who run the gallery. So we all kind of do everything together. So if you do get selected, or perhaps many of you have worked with us before, you already know that. So let's kind of go through this, and I'll try to be mindful of everyone's time. Thank you for joining us on a weekday evening. So let's get started. All right. So just a little bit about us. I recognize a lot of names here on the roster, but I also see a lot of new names and new faces. So a little bit about Angels Gate. We are a nonprofit located in San Pedro, which is Los Angeles. And we're located in Los Angeles City Park, Angels Gate Park. And we actually share the space with a lot of other organizations and city amenities. And our facilities are actually military buildings, World War II. And essentially, there are miles of tunnels and batteries and all kinds of really cool infrastructure that was built and left over from the 1940s. And what's great about Angels Gate is that artists actually took over the buildings and made them into artist studios in the 70s. And in 1982, we actually became an official nonprofit. Our mission is to provide a space for artists to work and to engage the community. We have really robust programming. We have 50 on-site artist studios. We have an artists in classrooms program in which we send our trained professional artist teachers out to schools throughout Los Angeles County. We have a robust list of community classes, including printmaking, ceramics, painting. We even have dance classes and ukulele. And we also host a number of events on our campus. So you can see two of those photos there. San Pedro, we have that every year. It's one of our largest attended events. And we have all kinds of things year-round happening throughout the campus. So the gallery is just one component of what Angels Gate Cultural Center does. So our gallery, it is 2 floors. We have white walls and we have a warm vinyl floor planking. Currently, we're going to be doing maybe 4 to 6 exhibitions a year. So I kind of want to give a little bit of context to the center as a nonprofit. And I'm sure this is not a surprise to any of you, but like many other nonprofit organizations, we have seen a historic reduction in public funding and support of the arts. I'm sure you all have heard of the bad news with the NEA, which we have received grants from in the past and no longer will, IMLS, and just funding is kind of significantly reduced for Angels Gate, and that does impact our gallery program. So we actually usually have done maybe up to like 9 exhibitions a year, but we will be kind of cutting that back to kind of be responsive to what's happening in terms of public funding. But there still is funding for Angels Gate. We're still committed to this program, and we still want to have this program and provide opportunities. It's maybe just less opportunities and less openings than we've had in prior years. Um, on a more positive note, we still have a lot of robust programming. Our art education field trip program is great because it's so related to what we do in the galleries. We actually bring in students into the exhibition space. You can see that image actually shows students on a field trip. I'm not sure how many students. Okay, it says right here, 800 students that we bring through the gallery each school year. And overall, we have about 8,500 gallery visitors annually. And what's really interesting about Angels Gate Cultural Center is that we bring in an audience who maybe this is their first time going to a contemporary art exhibition. So that's something we're really proud of, that we're not just catering to an art-going crowd. We also bring in a lot of people who are local to the community, a lot of people who maybe aren't necessarily exposed to contemporary artists or contemporary art, and that's something that we take a lot of pride in. A really important thing to know about Angels Gate Cultural Center, like I mentioned earlier, we're really old buildings, historic buildings, and we do have accessibility challenges that we are currently working on, writing grants for, and trying to resolve for the long term. But in the short term, just know that the top floor of our gallery space is stair access only, and we don't have an elevator to the top floor of a gallery. So I just want to be really transparent about that situation that we are working on a long-term solution for. Okay, opportunities. So you are all here because you saw the open call. So thank you for showing interest and being here tonight. And essentially, we really want to bring in artists who maybe have not been exposed to the local harbor community, who have maybe not shown in San Pedro. Not saying that that's a requirement, but that's one of the reasons that we have the open call program, is to bring a new set of artists and ideas, and expose our local community to new artists and ideas. And that's why we're continuing our commitment to this program. We have 3,000 approximately between the top floor and the bottom floor square feet of exhibition space. This opportunity includes a curator honorarium of $500, artist honorariums ranging between $100 to $450 per artist. It's a range because it really depends how many artists are in your show. And then, is the artist doing maybe a site-specific work? Are they doing a performance? Is the artist maybe teaching a workshop? So those things can kind of affect the honorarium that the individual artist might receive from Angels Gate. The other part of this is we provide the gallery supervision, so you don't have to worry about asking your artists to gallery sit or gallery sitting yourself. We have staff in the building that will supervise during our public hours, which is Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays between 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. And exhibitions will be open to the public for a 6 to 15 week period, with an additional approximately 2 week installation period. Sometimes it's 3 weeks, but 2 weeks is sort of our standard minimum installation time. Okay, what we're looking for. We're looking for independent curators, really in any career stage. Maybe even if this is your first curatorial proposal, that also is welcome. We have had that before. Or maybe you are a really experienced curator and you
Thank
have
you.
a
Thank you very much.
long curatorial resume, but perhaps maybe you're right now you don't have a professional posting to curate, right? So you want the opportunity to curate, and you are experienced. So we're really very open to curatorial experience. We're really looking for group exhibitions. We say 3 to 9. If maybe you have like 10, 11, maybe 12. I mean, if you make a really strong case to maybe go exceed that by a little bit, that's fine. Don't let that stop you. To be totally honest, the reason why we have a cap on it is financial reasons. Like I said earlier, we have some pretty strict budget limitations, especially going into this year with recent funding cuts. So that's kind of why we have the cap on it. However, I will say that from my experience, I've been with Angels Gate now, I'm coming upon 6 years in this role, managing the gallery. I will say that shows between 7, 8, 9 tend to fill the space really well. And that tends to be a really well balanced number for exhibitions. If you want to do something with a smaller group, a way to kind of consider this is maybe requesting a smaller space. Like if you have 3 artists and you feel really strongly about doing a proposal with 3 artists, perhaps all 3 artists are in the downstairs gallery, which is smaller. Or maybe all 3 of your artists do really, really big installations. So they take up a lot of space. So, we don't necessarily want to put limitations or restrictions, but that's just kind of an idea of maybe what has worked well for us in the past. We're really looking for exhibitions that have not previously shown in Los Angeles. And the reason being is because, opportunities, there's not enough opportunities for deserving shows out there, right? We know this. There's more artists and there's more curators and there's more curatorial ideas than there are spaces to show them. Therefore, we really want to prioritize showing an exhibition that maybe hasn't already had the opportunity to be seen. That being said, if this is something where it's sort of like a reiteration, or maybe you've done a version of it, but you're changing it up, or something's new from maybe you showed it a couple years ago, but you have a new set of artists, we don't want to prohibit you from applying. We don't want to say don't apply, but considering opportunity need is something that the review panel will be considering heavily. So keep that in mind. Not all of your artists have to be local or based in LA or even Southern California, but that is really helpful for a number of reasons. One, there's so many artists in LA County. We're a mecca for artists. So we have so many artists in our own backyard, right? And we want to show the artists who are here and who are a part of the greater Los Angeles arts community. So that's not a requirement, but that's something that we are looking for in general. And I would say the other part of this too is practical as well. We don't really have a shipping budget at this time, and shipping is, can be very costly. So just for practical reasons, we would also say mostly Los Angeles, greater LA local artists. That being said, it's very common for us to maybe have 1 or 2 artists that aren't local in a group show. But just keep in mind that right now we don't have shipping funding available. That might change. That often does change. We do get exhibition specific grants that enable us to do shipping, but we don't have those grants yet. So therefore we can't guarantee a shipping budget. And also note that, we're not looking for exhibitions that have a commercial appeal or that maybe you're going to make a lot of sales. We're a nonprofit. we don't sell a lot from our gallery. We just don't. We have in the past, and I would say, you know, we do a handful of sales a year, absolutely. But for us as a nonprofit space, that's certainly not our motivation. So I would say that work that is overly commercial or that could easily find an opportunity in a more commercial space, maybe that's not quite the best fit for Angels Gate. Again, we don't want to discourage anyone from applying. We just want to be very transparent in terms of what we're looking for, because we know your time is valuable. So we want you to apply if there's a really good chance of you getting accepted. Okay, so maybe a little bit more of the thematic in terms of what we're looking for. Um, you know, we're really open, and we'll show a couple of examples of prior shows, and I'll talk a little bit about them and why I want to highlight them. But essentially, you know, we're very open to experimental work, to maybe taking on challenging themes. Current social topics is something that we have shown a lot, and will continue to show. Perhaps themes that kind of combine different disciplines. For example, it could be art and science. You know, the PST theme was really big this past year, and that was something that we kind of explored in one of our shows. And we thought that was really interesting. So combining different fields and disciplines, underrepresented topics, artists, essentially, especially with what's happening now. I think it's really important to champion underrepresented voices, and that's kind of always been a part of our mission and what we do. So that is something we will be looking for in general to support. And of course, we're also interested in what's happening within the contemporary art scene right now. So shows, you know, just because we want to highlight underrepresented artists and social themes and maybe things that are a little experimental does not mean we're not interested in conceptual art. We absolutely are. So considering you know, what's happening with art right now, and especially artists working in Los Angeles, that is current, right? So we are interested in that as well. And then of course it has to be mindful of the fact that we are a nonprofit, and we are community serving. So it should be in alignment with that and not fighting against that. Not that I've ever seen that in a proposal, but I think that you kind of understand where we're coming from by including that. And then just some general guidelines. So you can apply as an individual curator. You can apply as part of a artist collective. We have had that before. You can be another organization or art space. You can submit more than one. However, this will be a highly competitive pool, I anticipate. So something to keep in mind. Curators must have residency in the United States. We just don't have the ability to pay fees or honorariums to to individuals who are based out of the country. We just don't have the ability to do that right now. And then I would say if you're an artist curating yourself into a show, the recommendation would be that there's a strong case for your own work to be included in your curatorial proposal. We know that artists often have to make their own opportunities to show. It's tough out there. There, like I said earlier, there's more artists than opportunities available. So therefore, we're happy for artist curators to kind of submit group shows that include their own work, but we definitely want it to be intentional and purposeful. And then I would say that, you know, on top of that, we're not really accepting solo shows or juried calls, just because Angels Gate already does juried calls. a couple times, maybe once or twice a year. And then we would also say no solo shows, just because, again, our goal is to provide opportunities for as many artists as we can. And then just another reminder that our shipping budget right now, we don't really have. So therefore, local works by local artists is definitely preferred. Okay, programming. So all of our exhibitions usually have at least one, if not more, programming components. There's some examples. So Beck and Call did a performance in in our dance classroom, actually. That's why you see the mirrors. That's actually mirrors behind them. And it was a really great performance of their work. Red Earth Gaze, that image in the middle, that is Lori Steelink. She did an artist talk in the gallery. Red Earth Gaze was guest curated by Gloria Sanchez. Really wonderful show. And then this past spring in January, we had Black in Place, which was also guest curated by Naomi Stewart. And there were multiple programming components for that guest curated exhibition. What was really wonderful is that Audiola, actually, who was in the show, did a really engaging performance at the opening reception. So just ways to kind of engage our community and a little bit deeper level. It can be an artist talk. We've done screenings before. It could potentially be a workshop. But that is something that is important to us, is some way to further engage the community with the topics, with the artists on view in the gallery through a programming event. Okay, tips for a successful proposal. This one might seem basic, and it is, but you'd be surprised that how this always needs a reminder. Annie and I go through lots and lots of files. So however you make it easier for us and kind of convey a level of professionalism that, does help your application. Of course. So something for the curatorial narrative. So we'll go over the different components of what's required. So this mostly speaks to the requirement of a curatorial narrative. Something about Angels Gate Cultural Center, again, is that we want to be accessible to a really broad audience of individuals. So I would say be careful, be mindful of not using too much art language. And those of you who maybe have a degree in from art school that was really conceptual, you know exactly what this means. If you don't know what this means, you probably don't use this language, because we really want an individual to come into our gallery. Maybe this is their first time maybe they've been to a museum, but not to an actual art gallery. And we want them to read the statement and feel like they can understand what it is that they're reading, because we don't want to sort of make people feel like they're not welcome, or maybe create a barrier to understanding what's kind of happening and what's going on in the gallery. So that's the rationale for that. High quality photos. Most of you know how important taking good quality photos of your artwork is, especially for this open call. This is so, so important. They don't have to be professional level photos. We wouldn't expect that you would spend money getting a professional level photo, right, of existing work. But there's lots of tutorials and lots of things online. If you feel a little bit unclear about what this means, I would recommend, YouTube is a really great resource in terms of learning how to photograph your own work. But just some basic things are to make sure that your photos are color corrected, so that the whites are coming across as white and not like a yellowish. That's a common problem, right? With non-professional photography. So color correction, making sure things are in focus. And then also resolution is really important. Granted, the committee will be looking at these images on a screen. We're not going to print them out, but we still need a decent resolution so that if we want to kind of zoom in, or if we want to have it be full screen on our laptop, we can kind of see the art clearly. And then the curatorial narrative, I already briefly touched on it, but essentially the curatorial narrative is really important because that's what tells the story of your proposal. I definitely recommend having someone proofread your narrative. It'd be great to have someone who is not familiar with the art world to read it. So get someone who maybe is not an artist, who's not a curator, who's not an art historian, get a non-art person to read your narrative and say, are you understanding these concepts? Does this make sense? Because they will be able to tell you if the ideas are communicated, because they don't have that, they don't come preloaded with that art knowledge, right? So to me, that's a good tip for making sure it communicates well, is to get someone who's not familiar with the concepts. And then conversely, get someone who is familiar with maybe your art concepts, or has a little bit more experience, because then they can also help you on the other end, kind of tease out the meaning and maybe make connection amongst your artists and help you pull out those themes and big picture ideas that are also important. Innovative concepts and themes. So that's not just in your narrative, but also in your artwork, and it needs to be communicated. So, if you have really big ideas in your curatorial narrative, but then they're not demonstrated in the actual artwork, then that would be an example of this not happening, right? Of your narrative not communicating, or maybe in conflict with maybe the images, or the images don't show your narrative. It kind of goes both ways. And then something important to us is the relevance to San Pedro. And that could be either to the inhabitants of San Pedro, it could be to the history. It could also be, it doesn't have to be a literal connection either. It could maybe be it's relevant because this idea is not really shown in Pedro, and it would be perhaps new to the people who live in San Pedro. And I would say that, don't feel intimidated by kind of the relevance or significance. We do show shows quite often that don't talk about San Pedro's history, that don't talk about our location to the port. It's not like those are the only kinds of shows that we want to have at the center. But this is something that we will consider. So it's not a requirement, but something to keep in mind. So now just a couple of images of some exhibitions. I believe most of these are from prior curatorial open calls. Sanctuary of the Aftermath was curated by Jason Jen and Vojislav Radovanovic. I always butcher his name. A lot of you probably know who they are. They're LA art documents. And this exhibition was significant, and it got into Angel's Gate because it had really strong visuals in their proposal. And the theme, Sanctuary of the Aftermath, was really on point. This was the first exhibition that reopened our gallery after the pandemic, when we finally reopened our doors to the public. And Sanctuary of the Aftermath really talked about people processing trauma. So it was very timely and relevant, and really significant to Angel's Gate. And because of that significance and the timeliness, and of course their really strong and compelling art, it was selected for our open call that year. Here's another exhibition, Portals, which was guest curated by Stephanie Sherwood. This exhibition was selected because, again, the visuals were really compelling, really strong individual works. And Portals was only loosely tied to Angel's Gate in terms of a connecting theme between all the works. Essentially, the theme was um, portals, whether literal or metaphorical, are used as a way to facilitate change in society, change within human interaction. So we're situated by the port. This wasn't directly about the port. This one work happens to kind of by Alicia Pillar, that's prominent in this image, does happen to talk about the history of the port of Los Angeles and how that transformed our economic history and the peoples that came through, but a vast majority of the works were not site specific or didn't speak to it. But it was a really interesting way to kind of look at the port and kind of tie in to our location, approximate to the Port of Los Angeles, but with really striking and compelling contemporary works. This exhibition was not in our open call. However, I wanted to point this out because this exhibition was sort of, we put this in our gallery. This is Beck and Call, and they did a performance of part 2, A Shadow Out of the Noise. That was one of the sample photos we saw a couple of slides back. But this was really exciting to put in the gallery because this was performance work that was kind of experimental for our audience. So it was really interesting to bring in a new, maybe more experimental, more avant-garde media to the people who participated in Angel's Gate and bring them something new that maybe they haven't seen before. So that was kind of the reasoning why I wanted to show this image, because this maybe didn't really talk about our location or didn't talk about individuals. It was more conceptual and more experimental in its media, and that's why I wanted to highlight this amongst our examples. Material recovery. So this was proposed by a collective. So Link Collective, they're a printmaking collective. They're a pretty large group of printers based in Los Angeles and Orange County. And they proposed an exhibition where their collective members and some invited artists essentially did contemporary pieces that used recycled, recovered materials. And it was really diverse in terms of the themes that all of the artists touched upon, but it was unified in the media and unified in the experimentation. This show wasn't a guest curated from our proposal or open call, I should say, but it was related to art and science. So this was juried by Kira Zonarica method, and it was kind of looking at the scientific method. This was in alignment with the PST Art and Science Collide theme. But this show had some really interesting examples combining technology and artificial intelligence. And there was also some mechanical systems and kind of looking at biology and ecosystems and combining that with art. So that's why I wanted to show this example. This exhibition, I mentioned it earlier, Black in Place, that was guest curated by Naomi Stewart. This was a really wonderful and well thought out exhibition. Naomi really dug deep into the Black diaspora and erasure and reclamation. And so this exhibition was really heavy. There were a lot of heavy and compelling themes, but then there were also a lot of engaging works. So this work that's pictured is actually a painting augmented with augmented reality. So you would hold your cell phone to the painting, and this painting in particular, Bodega, this figure, it's kind of hard to see, but would actually like walk across the painting on your cell phone. It was really interesting. So I wanted to highlight this exhibition, a really great exhibition and really well curated. And those are kind of the examples. If maybe I'll just throw a couple more that you should look at. So on our gallery page, I'll just take you there really quickly and come back to this. So on our website, you can see our exhibition archive, and I really recommend going through this to kind of get a sense for the exhibitions that have come through our space over the years. I think that would probably be really helpful. I mentioned looking at Black in Place, Portals, Sanctuary of the Aftermath, Displacing Structures would be another good one to look at. Uplifting Tales and Eroded Histories. That one's a couple years older, but that one was really site specific and nuanced. And that show was only 3 artists, but they were really large installations. So that's maybe an example if you want to go in that direction. But look on our website. We have some really great examples of past guest curated shows on there. And now to kind of go through the application process. So on our website, and I'm sure you've all seen this, right? And that's why you're here. But on our website, we have under gallery, we have open calls. And all of the documents to apply are right here on the page. And so pretty much everything that I'm talking about today is covered in all of these documents, and it appears somewhere in the documents. But that's where you're going to find this checklist in terms of what you all need to compile for your application. So you do need the proposal form, which is just the 1-page information sheet, followed by a curatorial narrative. 2 pages max. Please only send us 2 pages because we have limited time, and I'm sure we'll have many proposals to read. And also editing that editing down is a skill. And if you do have your show come to Angels Gate Cultural Center, there will be a lot of editing and a lot of condensed paragraphs of language. So something that will have to happen regardless. Up to 15 labeled images. Was that pages or images? Now I gotta double check something. So I think it's images, but we want it in one PDF or one PowerPoint file rather than 15 individual attachments. That just makes our life a little bit easier. Ideally, all of those images are labeled, with your standard artist, title, year it was completed, and materials. A note on the images. I would say that we understand that things can kind of change in the process, especially because we're asking for these applications pretty far in advance of when we would actually show the exhibition. So if you're feeling a little bit like, well, I don't think I can get 15 exact works that I know I will be able to show in 1 or 2 years, don't stress too much about that. To me, what's more important, to us, what's more important is that your artist selections are pretty solid, and maybe the themes that your artists work in really supports your curatorial narrative. And those images just kind of show that, right? So maybe you have an artist that does a lot of site-specific work, a lot of time and immediate work. Obviously, they're not going to have images of what they might show at Angels Gate a year or 2 from now. But if you just show us examples of that artist's work, that's fine. I will say, though, that for the most part, your artist should not be surprised that you're including them in your proposal, right? So We don't expect that you're doing hours of studio visits with every single artist that's in your proposal, but it definitely should at least be a conversation or an email thread. Hey, would you be potentially interested? That way, if your proposal does get accepted, your artist list is pretty solid. Curatorial experience. This would be, I would kind of equate this to perhaps a cover letter to kind of introduce your curatorial motivations. Perhaps you're a curator who's really interested in underrepresented artistic voices. Maybe you're a curator that's really interested in emergent media, experimental media, and this is also your place to really show us your experience and maybe kind of prove to us that, you know, this is something that you're A, really excited about, and B, really prepared and capable to do with us. So that's where that would kind of fit, because we know that that doesn't really fit in the curatorial narrative. And we also know that it's really helpful sometimes for a curator to talk about where this proposal fits within the big picture of their curatorial career and interests. And then, of course, a resume. If you're an artist and maybe this is your first time curating a show, an artist resume is fine. It doesn't have to be a curatorial resume. If you want to do a CV that's a little bit more robust, you can. I would say that if you've co-curated or you've been part of a curatorial team, make sure you kind of identify your role and maybe who you worked with on that resume. And then optional, definitely not required, is to also include the resumes of proposed artists that you want to exhibit, or maybe other significant contributors if you have any. So all of these items, 5 to 6 items, sent as attachments to gallery at Angels Gate Art with the subject, curatorial proposal, the title, and your name. If maybe the file is too big, you can send us a Dropbox link or a Google Drive link to download. If maybe, for example, your image file is too large to attach, that's totally fine, or a zip file is fine as well. Okay, how are we going to make these choices? It's not just me, it's part of a committee. So we put together a small committee that will be myself, most likely a board member from Angels Gate, a curator who was part of the last round. I like to have that, you know, that historical, a little bit of carryover. And then 1 or 2 people who aren't part of Angels Gate or haven't necessarily curated, but maybe they're a curator for another gallery or a gallery director for another space. And then we do it off of a rubric. So we consider the strength of the written proposal, the curatorial narrative, the artistic excellence of your images. That's why your image quality is so important. The diversity of artists, media, concepts, and ideas. It's not so much, when we say diversity of artists, it's not so much a checklist. It's more so like, are the artists and what they're exploring in terms of how they do it with their media, or maybe the concepts, is that varied within their proposal, right? So is it a proposal of 10 landscape painters, or is it a proposal of 10 artists who address, maybe this artist looks at landscape and this artist looks at place and location. So that's kind of what we mean by that. Relevance to our location or our community. Again, it doesn't have to be a literal tie, but of course a literal tie will help you, but it doesn't have to be literal. And then of course the opportunity need. Has it been shown before? You know, we also like to consider, oh, this is an emergent curator and this is a really strong proposal, and we want to give someone an opportunity, right, that maybe hasn't had that opportunity beforehand. So that's kind of what we're going to be considering. Important dates, August 15th is when the applications are due. The review committee will meet and select proposals at the end of August. September 30th is probably before that, but this will be the latest that applicants will be notified. And then probably not December, January 2026. That's kind of soon. I mean, maybe we'll kind of see how things go. But the exhibitions, it'll be in 2026 and 2027. And yeah, now is the time for Q&A. So I'm going to stop sharing and kind of now, Annie, if you want to jump in with any questions, you can.
Yeah.
Or go ahead.
One question that we got in the chat was about the dimensions of the galleries. So I shared a link to the floor plans that are on that open call page. It has the widths of the walls, and then it has the heights of the walls written off to the side as well. And then if anyone has any other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and I can share them, or you can raise your hand.
Yeah, I do see there was a couple questions, but it looks like we did answer them. Okay. Okay, so is it guaranteed that artists will receive an honorarium of at least $100? Yes, that is a guarantee. Okay, for community engagement, could we do a fundraiser? I mean, maybe, perhaps that would be something we definitely would want to talk through. Angels Gate Cultural Center, we do fundraising events for the center in terms of all of our operations and all of the programming that we do. So that could potentially work, but I guess I would have follow-up questions about what that could be and what that would look like.
I also
Okay.
want to add, I think the programming aspect doesn't have to be completely figured out when you're submitting the proposal. It is just something that we will want if this proposal is selected.
Yes, that is a really good point. So don't stress too much about it. If you already have an idea of what that programming could be, maybe you've already talked to an artist who's interested in doing a workshop or some sort of screening. If you already know what that is, feel free to include it, but we don't make it a prompt in our application because we know that we need time to develop it. Another question, must the curator have any formal art school education? No, absolutely not a requirement to have any formal education in curatorial or art. Okay, can we have a call for artists in addition to our artists we worked with previously? Maybe, so this gets a little interesting and something that I would definitely want to talk to more about. I would say that the preference is for curatorial proposals, and the way that we view curatorial proposals is that the curator has already identified and done the work of selecting those artists already, and therefore are able to have a curatorial perspective and narrative or some sort of thesis, I guess. So that would be the preference, that your artists are already identified. So we wouldn't necessarily, I do think it might be something that would make your application less competitive if you stated that artists to be determined. Yeah. Can you showcase more than 9 artists? You can. Just know that, as I mentioned earlier, our resources are limited. So that's why we have a recommendation of 3 to 9 artists. But if you really wanted to show more than that, if you make a strong case to show more than 9 artists, you absolutely can submit your proposal with more than 9. Okay. All right. Are there any other questions? Yes, I do see a hand raised for Adrian. You are muted, so you'll have to unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for this. It's very helpful. My question is if I can organize or curate a show from San Francisco Bay Area artists. And the second question is if one of these special events or lectures could be like a live painting and music with musicians from LA.
That programming event sounds awesome. Yes, we would definitely be open to that. As far as curating a show with artists mostly from San Francisco, I would say the hard part about that is the distance, right? They're not local and we don't have a travel or a shipping budget. So that might be, you know, a barrier to some of those artists to participate, right? But I would not say that that should keep you from applying. That's just something to keep in mind to make your artists, to make your proposal more competitive. I would recommend maybe pairing San Francisco and local artists. Currently at Angels Gate, we don't have the gallery open, but we're actually installing a show right now where we have 4 artists from New Orleans paired with 4 artists from Los Angeles, because it's kind of talking about the 2 cities approximate to water, their connection to place and location. So that's an interesting way to bring non-local artists into the space. That exhibition did receive a special grant. So that's why we're able to do it, to kind of afford having those non-local artists, but something for you to keep in mind and have that conversation with your artists too. Hey, right now they don't have a shipping budget. I'm not sure if we're going to get one. If we can't find the funding for it, would you still be interested in showing at Angels Gate? So as long as you're transparent with the artists, then I think that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. I got another question. How many proposals can be submitted? You can submit multiple. You absolutely can. We don't have a limit on that. I will say that in the past, the last round, maybe we got 40 submissions and we accepted, I don't know if you remember, Annie, maybe like 5. And this time, due to funding limitations, we can't even accept 5 this time. Maybe we're doing like 2 to 3. And that being said, if things change, we could always go back to the proposals that we initially said, you know, that we initially did not accept, and say, hey, we found more funding. Would you be interested in showing your proposal after all? So that's still an option for us in the future. Another great question, are we responsible for installing our works? Great question. So for the most part, ready to hang works, I would say no. That's something that Annie and I do with supports. Sometimes we can bring in contracted preparators. We also have other staff who kind of help us with installation. No, we don't expect the curator and artist to kind of install everything. With that, there is an exception, and that would be really like delicate or labor intensive installations that require the artist to install themselves. So that would be kind of where we say, hey, your piece, it's a little bit nuanced, or, you know, this is going to be 8 hours to install. With the small team that we have, we don't have the capacity to install really complex installations like that. We just don't have the people power to do it. So that would be the exception. Were complicated installations, we would ask the artist to do that. That's a great question. I see a hand raised from Jeanette, if you wanted to jump in with your question.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for doing this. I am on your newsletter, so I get all of y'all's opportunities. I had several questions actually.
Sure.
I just want to know, like, what is expected of the curator?
Yeah. So what's expected? That's a great question. So what's expected of the curator is that you identify the artists and the artworks. It's expected that in that first round of communication in terms of like communicating with the artist, picking the work, confirming their availability, that is the expectation of the curator. We also expect that, you'll provide us a final narrative that will be related to the curatorial native narrative that you put in your proposal, but we do expect that there'll be like a final narrative that you write that we can use, and that you also assist with layout. How are the works, because as the curator, we want to respect your vision for how everything comes together in the gallery. So then there's the expectation that you'll meet us at the gallery once we have all of the works received, and you'll kind of do the placement. You'll kind of work with us and collaborate with us and in terms of what works are installed where in the gallery. And that's sort of like the baseline expectations. In terms of paperwork with the artist, that's something that we handle. In terms of, all the scheduling and logistics and coordination, we handle that. We do a bulk of the heavy lifting for the actual installation of the works in the space. We supervise the gallery. We do the logistics for the events. We also do things like we do all the lighting. We finish all the walls. So we do all of the administrative work for the shows. Does that kind of answer your question?
That goes, yes, it answers it and it goes beyond. And I just want to respect everyone's time too. So there's a couple of other things. So I just want to make sure I understand. This is for new works that haven't been shown, correct?
Oh, not necessarily. So
Oh,
works could have been shown. Maybe it's being conflated with the idea that we don't want to show a show that has already been shown in that iteration that's replicated exactly the same with the same works, the same artists. That's what we don't want to do, is replicate a show that's already been shown. But works absolutely can be pre-existing works, and we know that many artists do show individual works more than once.
okay. And I also just want to be certain, so what the payment is for artists, because I mean, $100 to 450 is a very big range.
Yep.
So there really is a disproportion there. And so I write grants for a living and I'm an independent
Sure.
creator and artist. So in order to really understand the caliber of work, there needs to be a budget and a framework to work within. So is that not provided? It's just kind of weird that it's so open-ended and there's really no parameters around it.
Yeah, so I think for us, the way that we've kind of handled it in the past versus the kind of model we're working towards now, that range does reflect kind of the range in which we've paid honorariums to artists for guest curated shows in the past. And the reason that it is hard to get more specific at this time is because to us, there's a big difference between a group show of 3 artists versus a group show of like 20, right? There's a big difference there in terms of an artist maybe only putting one work in a show that's pre-existing versus an artist putting 5 works that are new or site specific. So that's kind of why it's kind of hard to kind of nail that down more specific. I'd be happy to kind of like take this conversation, like if you want to get more nuanced about it. I just want to respect the time limit. We absolutely can, but that's why it's kind of open-ended right now, because it is different. And we also kind of want to respect, if an artist does a one-time performance in the gallery, right, that's not something they can sell, versus an artist that hangs a painting. That painting kind of, they can take with them to another show and they can kind of sell it. So that's why there's kind of a range. And for us, that's kind of the budget that we have available. I wish we had a bigger budget for that, but frankly, we don't have it. So we're just trying to be as transparent as we can be at this time with the resources that we have. When it comes to a budget for other items, so we don't mention other items in the budget because that's something that we provide standard. So we always provide show cards. We always have a budget for gallery vinyl. We always provide a budget for hospitality, for the reception. So those things are kind of standard with every show, and they're not exactly flexible. So that's why we don't list it as a separate budget. But those are other resources that we provide to our shows. Is
Right
that
on.
kind of helpful?
It is, and I'm an arts advocate and I do policy
Mhm.
work as well. And I just want to
Mhm.
say again, thank you for doing this, but it really does help as someone who works, and I am ingrained in curatorial practices and art
Mhm.
advocacy across the US, that having a
Mhm.
budget and being standardized in some sort of way will help us to understand the capacity of ourselves as well as artists.
Yeah,
Far,
absolutely.
because far and few in between artists are taken advantage of and exploited, whether it's a
Mhm.
performance or a painting,
Mhm.
nonetheless.
Mhm.
And I also want to just, as for advice for further webinars, if you are doing an open call like this for curatorial practices,
Mhm.
it would
Mhm.
benefit us, me as a viewer, and trying to understand your process, to not show shows that have a different kind of budget style, because it's not really relative to the capacity or what is expected of a budget of this size. So do
Mhm.
you understand what I'm saying? Because there's,
Yes, sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's helpful. I
you
will
know what
say
I
that,
mean?
yeah,
Because I want to know
most,
what people that are within this realm can actually
yeah,
produce within showing nine artists at $100, and I do
right.
appreciate that you absorb other costs. So that's really
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
That's all.
So, yeah, and I will say that all the guest curated examples that we showed all were consistent with that range. They weren't uh, like vastly different. They were those honorariums for all those. I'm kind of running through the list in my head, did fall within those range. So that those shows are kind of what's possible with the resources and budget that we have. But I think that's valid. So thank you for bringing up your point. Any other questions? Okay, great question in the chat. What support can be expected from the gallery regarding promotion of the exhibit? Great question. So we kind of take ownership over really getting the word out there. We have 4,000 people on our mailing list that all get announcements of the shows and what's happening. We do a press kit. So we write a press release that's sent to our PR and media list. And then we put together a package of promotional graphics that we share with the artists, which include Instagram images, email images that you can embed into your email. And we also give you language for that. And then different graphics of different sizes. We typically also try to do ads in either Artillery or Carla for every show. So that's another way that we promote our exhibitions. And then in addition to that, we do heavy social media promotion. And we provide, this promotional packet of digital assets to all of our artists and some language that all of our artists can share to their networks. And then we do a lot of heavy promotion on our end as well. So that's a great question in terms of promotion. Oh, and physical show cards. So you can have some physical collateral to promote as well. Okay. Are there any insights on ensuring the pieces? Great question. So we have a broad policy to ensure artworks in our gallery. Right now, our insurance covers up to a cumulative value of $200,000 worth of art in our gallery at any one time. So another thing to keep in mind with your artists that you might be selecting, if you feel like your artists are gonna way exceed that cumulative value in your show, that's something to keep in mind, because we just don't have the resources or our facilities are not temperature controlled. They're really old buildings. So it's just something to keep in mind is the cumulative value of your exhibition. Currently, our insurance only supports 200,000 cumulative value of works that we will insure when the work is in our care. So essentially what that means is once it's in the gallery and with Angels Gate staff handling it or contracted workers handling it, that's when it's covered by our insurance. So artists don't have to provide their own insurance for the piece once it arrives to the gallery. Some artists do because they want that, but definitely not a requirement. Okay. Question, when we submit artists, do we need to submit the actual artworks? Can we have the artist provide the artworks afterwards? So essentially, if you feel pretty confident that, oh, this piece really speaks to the curatorial theme, I want to show this piece, then yes, please include that. But we also know that things can change, and maybe your artist, like I mentioned earlier, does time specific work. So maybe it's just examples of works by that artist that demonstrate their capabilities, right? And their potential. So you don't have to have the actual works kind of 100% nailed down. I would say a really good representation of the themes that you're discussing in your curatorial theme. And for the most part, you should have a pretty good idea of whether the artist is going to be, yes, I'll be in the show, or no, I'm not going to be in the show. Like you should have that idea before including those images by the artist. So I hope that kind of helps. Let me know if you feel like that's not clear, but essentially we want it to be kind of flexible and give you some flexibility because we know that things change and artist works change, and we want to be open to that. But of course, we kind of want to get a visual picture of what your exhibition could be, what it could look like in the space. Okay. Okay, can you tell us more about how we could request the smaller space? Yes, so if you want to request a smaller space and you don't want to request both floors of the gallery for one show, you absolutely can do that. On the proposal information form, let's see. Yes, it says, do you have a preference for the gallery rooms utilized? So on the floor plan, the way it works is that space A is the first space you would walk into coming into the gallery. Space B is the second space. That's all one floor, A and B, and it's connected. And that is the smaller of the two gallery spaces, and that is on the first floor, and that first floor is accessible. And then the larger spaces, C and D, are upstairs. So if you haven't been to Angels Gate Cultural Center, I highly recommend that you visit before the deadline. Currently, the gallery, we're transitioning and doing another show, but the gallery will reopen on the 26th. So I know that's not a huge amount of time between the due date. But another resource is you can look at our walkthroughs. So for each of our shows, we have a curatorial, an exhibition virtual walkthrough, and it kind of takes you through the space. It kind of looks like Google Maps where you can kind of drag yourself through it and walk through. So if you can't make it to the gallery or you haven't been, I highly recommend you check out our past exhibitions. Another question, do you have a budget for food and drinks? We do for the opening reception. So that's something that Angels Gate manages, and food and drink is permitted in the gallery. We know that sometimes artists have really sensitive works, or maybe there's a lot of things on the floor. So sometimes we'll say no drink permitted beyond this space to protect the work. But we start from, yes, food and drink are permitted during the opening reception. Now, during our gallery hours, for the most part, not really is food and drink permitted, but it's not really a huge problem either outside of receptions where we have people coming in with food and drink. And libations, yes, we do have wine at our opening receptions unless maybe a curator or an artist requests that it be alcohol free, then we'll respect that. Okay. Is there any kind of AV and tech equipment available? Yes, we have a number of flat screen televisions, and we also have a couple of projectors. We do also have some headphones. So yes, we do have tech equipment available. If your show is especially tech heavy, where every single art piece needs a TV, and you've got 20 artworks, that's something that maybe would be a challenge we'd have to discuss. But for the most part, if you only have a handful of works requiring tech, that's very doable and achievable for us. Okay. Okay. Artists do not have to provide new works for the show. They can be pre-existing works. But we know a lot of artists like to create new works as well, but that's certainly not a requirement. Okay. I think I got all of the questions, and we are scheduled to end this at 8:30. So there is time for any last questions or anything like that. If not, you can email us questions, gallery@angelsgateart.org. So any additional questions, or maybe if something comes up that you didn't think of tonight, feel free to send us an email. Okay, if there's no other questions, maybe we can all have 15 minutes back of our night. And I think we are great. So thank you, everyone. We will do our best to get this posted online. But I hope this was helpful, and we really look forward to receiving your proposals and learning more about new artists and your curatorial vision. So thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your night.